In this video, I will help you set up your Nikon Z52 for a bit of night sky photography. I'll be focusing a little bit more on shooting night sky time lapses here, but all the same settings can be applied here if you just want to take a single image. Now, what I'm going to do is go through some gear, then some exposure settings, then I'll go into some menu options that will also help you shoot in the dark. Then I'll jump out into the field and put it all together. So, let's get into it. Now, the Z52 isn't a low light champion. It's not a camera you'll be running for when it's time to do a bit of low light shooting. It reminds me of a micro four thirds camera in the sense that it's not that great in the dark, but you can get around that limitation just with a fast lens. Now, when I mean a fast lens, I mean a lens with a low minimum aperture, such as f1.2 or 1.8 and up to 2.8. So tonight I will be using the Viltrox 13mm f1.4 lens. Now this is a decent little lens, perfect for landscape and night shooting. On a full frame camera, this would be the equivalent of around 20 to 21mm focal length, so a nice sweet spot for astro shooting. Another bit of gear that I will be using and have been using for many years is the lens muff. This is just a little sleeve that wraps around your lens like so. But the thing is, there are little pockets inside where you can drop in some hand warmers. They might be called something different in your neck of the woods, but all you do is drop them into these pockets and it will keep your lens nice and warm overnight. The point of this is to stop any condensation or dew forming on the lens if you leave it out overnight. This is good if you are shooting in any cold areas or shooting in times of the year where you get mist or fog or any other dew forming overnight. Handy to have. You do have to make sure that it is closer to the end of the lens and not the camera, just to make sure the heat is in the right spot. I have been caught out before. Now, another bit of gear I will be using tonight is this. This is the Anker 533 power bank. I don't really trust these Z52 batteries at all, especially when shooting overnight in a low temperature. So anything that will keep giving the camera power, I will be happy to use. I have used this thing to power my Z8 with no problems, so imagine it won't even blink while powering the Z52. I'm only using this because I want to do a long overnight time lapse tonight, so I need that extra bit of juice. That's all the gear I'll be using tonight. So now let's dig into some menu options. Okay, so there's only two menu settings I want to talk about here, and both are helpful when shooting in the dark. Both of these settings have been passed down from the Z9 and Z8, so you know that they are going to be extremely helpful here. The first one is called Warm Display Colors, and you can find this under the Custom Settings menu. So let's jump in now. So I am in my Custom Settings menu here. Then I scroll down to Shooting and Display. I go down to D12. And there it is. I mostly pick Mode 2. This is pretty much to turn your screen red, making it easier to see in the dark. Now, you don't really need this setting on, but I find it's handy to have, but it's better than not having it. Remember to turn it off when you're in sunlight as well. The next setting is extremely useful to find that perfect focus in the dark, and that is Starlight View. To find this, once again, go into the Custom Settings menu, go to Shooting Display, then you want to go down to D11, and then turning that on. Turning this on will just crank the exposure of your monitor or viewfinder. I like to zoom in, find a star, then adjust my focus so the star is nice and sharp. The whole point of this setting is to make sure your stars are nice and sharp. I must say that it can be a little bit of a challenge doing this on the Z52 at times, since the sensor noise can make it a little bit hard to focus. If you are having trouble getting the correct focus with this mode turned on, if you just focus a little bit under infinity, it will usually give you the sweet spot for correct focus. But this is very handy for those times that you can get that star in focus. Now, let's talk a little bit about exposure settings and some time-lapse settings. So since I will be using the Viltrox 13mm, I need to find the correct long exposure setting that will not give me accidental star trails. So I want a shutter speed that isn't too slow or too fast. To do this, I use an app called PhotoPills. This is a paid app, only about 15 bucks, but it is really worth the cash. Whenever I'm shooting a night sky shot, I always check this out to make sure that my shutter speed is suitable for the lens. Let's jump into PhotoPills now, and I'll show you what I mean. So scroll down to Spot Stars. You can see the camera here. If you don't see your camera, click here and either scroll down to find the Z52 or just type it in. Along here are your lens settings. Click here to put in your focal length. So for me, it will be 13mm. Press Done. Now I will be shooting wide open at f1.4. If I want to change that, I will go into it and scroll through and pick the aperture I will be using. But for tonight, it's wide open, baby. Now, if you look here, the NPF rule, this takes into account the megapixels of your camera. Now, I used to use the 500 rule, but found I would get better results with the NPF rule. You can use whatever you like, but I personally prefer that. It works for me, so just choose what works for you. It's probably more suited to modern mirrorless cameras over DSLRs. Now, back to PhotoPills. Here it is telling me that the shutter should be 6.35 seconds long. Done. Now let's talk about some time-lapse settings. Firstly, the interval. Now this is very simple and an easy way to start understanding time-lapsing intervals. So my exposure will be, let's say, 6 seconds long. This will mean that my interval will be 12 seconds. So the camera will take a shot, holding the shutter open for 6 seconds, then close the shutter for 6 seconds, then take another 6-second shot. So on and on and on. That's pretty much it for your interval. If I was shooting for 30 seconds, my interval will be 1 minute. A 30-second shot, 30-second closed shutter, and so on and so on. If I was shooting for 10 seconds, my interval will be 20 seconds. You get the picture. To set up your time-lapse, go into your menu. Let's do that now. So that is under Photo Shooting menu. Scroll all the way down here. And we want to get to interval time of shooting. Now go in there. Now, here is where you put in your interval in. In this case, for tonight, I will enter 12 seconds. And I do that. I just scroll up or down, press OK. Now, how many shots do I want to take tonight? I'm not too sure, but I will make that decision when I'm out there tonight. So let's go in there anyway. So for example, if I want to take 1,000 shots, this means it will take a single image 1,000 times. And I do that by going down here, and we'll just change that to 1 and 0. So there you go, 1,000 shots times 1 frame. Done. Okay, quickly jumping back into the land of apps. Here is one I recommend that is called Timelapse app. This is for iPhone, so apologies to my Android brethren, but I'm sure there's something similar out there that does the same thing. Jumping in there, let's put in my interval. So it's 12 seconds with 1,000 shots. That will take me 3 hours and 20 seconds for a 40-second time-lapse sequence. Nice. So let's go over that again. That is a 6-second shutter, so that's a long exposure shot. The interval is 12 seconds, so that is a 6-second gap after the shot. I want to shoot for 1,000 images, which will shoot for 3 hours or thereabouts, which will give me a 40-second time-lapse sequence, if that makes sense. So this is a great app to calculate how long you want to shoot for and how long you want your final time-lapse sequence to last. I highly recommend checking out this app. It's very simple and free. Okay, back to my time-lapse settings. So I'm shooting 1,000 images at an interval of 12 seconds. The next setting I want to have is exposure smoothing. Make sure that is on. It is very important, extremely important when shooting a time-lapse to prevent any nasty flicker happening across your sequence. Always have this turned on. Next, scroll down to options. Here you can create a 4K video output of the sequence without even editing any images. This is ready to go and handy if you just want to use that. I choose H.265 and make sure that I'm shooting, because I'm in PAL, I make sure I shoot in 25 frames per second, and you pick your desired resolution here. Going back, I like to turn on starting storage folder. It's always nice. It's just a nice way to keep your cards nice and neat, and the time lapses in their own folder within the card. That's just me. Sometimes I've lost frames because they've been scattered throughout the card, but just keep it in the new folder and that's it. Not necessary, but nice to have nonetheless. One more thing before we go, and that is white balance. Now, if you are shooting a single shot, setting your camera to auto white balance isn't really an issue here. You can easily change that if you're editing, but if you're shooting thousands of images, you want the colors to keep the same. You don't want them changing left and right. So there's two ways. Firstly, you can set it up using some of the default presets, or you can use a custom white balance. I prefer to set a custom white balance on the day before it gets dark, but you can choose whatever you want. But just make sure that when you're shooting a time lapse, make sure you are not using auto white balance. I've been caught out before. So that is your exposure settings and time lapse settings all done. But there's one last thing I like to do before shooting. If I'm using a power bank to charge the camera overnight, I have to expose some ports on the side. Here on the Z52, the HDMI port will be exposed. What I do is just get some duct tape and cover the open port. I like to smother it all over it just to prevent any dew or condensation getting into those open holes on the side of the camera. Now, tonight, unfortunately, there is a full moon. Now, I didn't plan to shoot during a full moon. It's just what happened with my schedule and calendar and postponements due to weather. Tonight is the only free night I have to shoot, but I will still make do. The location I'm going to is one I haven't been to before, so I'm excited to see what I can manage around with a clear night and a full moon. But it should be great. So, let's go. Tonight, I am staying in a cabin in this eerie and quiet pine forest. The weather is holding out for now, but there is a prediction of a change around 2 a.m. So I'm hoping to get all my time lapses done tonight. So as it is a bit of a volatile location here, the weather is predicted to change around 2 a.m, which I thought was going to happen, but you always hope that it's not, but it's going to happen. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to change up some of my shots. So number one is this shot here, looking up directly at the pines. So I'm going to start at 6:30 when it's officially night, and I'll probably crank that till about 10:30. Then I will move back over to the cabin over here, but I'll get closer to the cabin, not looking at the cabin, but looking back at the pines. I might shoot low. That might be an issue with some dew that'll come through. So that'll be a time lapse from probably 10:30 till, look, I fill up the card. I'm not too worried about that. So I'm going to come in here, shoot in this direction up here, up there, shooting down low. At 20 mil, it should be quite nice. So they're the two time lapses tonight. This is the thing with time lapsing a lot of the time. Especially if you come to a brand new location and you're not sure what's happening, you're just sort of winging it as you go. And that's what I'm doing tonight. And then, weather dependent, it affects a lot of things. But I think this shot looking directly up as the moon rises will look pretty good. And then also the shot looking back at the pines will look pretty great as well. So fingers crossed, conditions remain good until tomorrow morning when the sun rises, but I think around 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock, it's going to get cloudy and it may rain. So it may be a mad dash out of the cabin to grab my camera, with my Jimmy Jams on, trying not to get it to water damage. But it should be fine if there's a light drizzle that comes through. So this is the thing, if you don't know the location, you're just winging it as you go. You got to adapt to this situation, and sometimes it's a challenge, sometimes it's fun, sometimes it can be annoying, especially when it's been predicted all week for a clear night sky. But look, I can't complain. This is a beautiful spot, and if the sky remains clear till the early morning and I get some time lapses, I'll be happy. So I know the Z52 isn't a camera that people run to grab off the shelf for low light shooting, but I think with the moon, with the added luminance, I think it should be reliable enough to produce some decent results. It's just those clouds, that rain, what are you going to do? But anyway, the sun is starting to set. It is 5:45. The sun will set officially at 6:30. I might just get my tripod set up here. I'm going to get my hand warmers just yet. I might get that sorted closer to 6 o'clock. But yeah, it is eerily quiet here. Alright, so the temperature has dropped really very quickly, and it is very cold out here. So I'm out under the pines and looking up here. I'm just recording the screen to give you an idea, so I'll have to crouch down to get a go of this. So what I want to do now is turn on my starlight mode and my red light mode. So I'm going to do that first. So I'm going to jump into my menu, and I'm going to find my warm colors display. I'm going to turn that on, put that to mode 2, so now everything is in that red light sort of look. I'm going to go down to starlight view, I'm going to turn that on. Now I'm going to go back to my menu. So now, as you can see, that is quite overexposed, but easy to see. So what I'm going to do, zoom in on my screen, and I'm going to find some stars. So all I have to do to get in focus here, I'm going to zoom in a little bit more. Those stars are a little blobby. So I'm just going to make sure I'm in focus here. So I'm out of focus. And I think that should be in focus, maybe. I'm not too sure. But anyway, I'll do a test shot. So that's all looking pretty good for me. So I'm just going to turn this back on. I'm going to jump back into the menu here to do the time lapse. So I will be using since I have a 6-second shutter, I will be using a 12-second interval. I am shooting for 3 hours. It is currently, what is the time? 7 o'clock. So I will be shooting till 10:30, so I'll be shooting 910 shots with an interval of 12 seconds with a shutter speed of 6 seconds, and that is that. Focus is good, composition's good, camera settings are good, interval settings are good, my lens muff is on, and that's pretty much it. I press record and then go back inside. Alright, so I am in my second location, and I'm just going to be focusing on these pine trees with the moon behind me. The moon is so bright, so it sort of overpowers the scene a little bit, but I think I'm just going to leave this. It's currently 10 o'clock, and I'm just going to leave this till 6 a.m. until the sun comes up, or until the card is full. So it should get the entire sequence of the moon going over the top and putting some light on these pine trees as it comes behind the camera. There's magpies calling in this forest, and that's echoing around. It's really strange. Very cool, but very strange. With the full moon, it's giving this real eerie sort of feel, but not here to be scared. We're here to take a time lapse with the Z52. So same settings, shutter speed of 6 seconds, and an interval of 12 seconds. I've just had to bump the ISO down a little bit because it is so bright. Hand warmers are on there. and it's pretty much ready to go. So I've got that same settings as before, the red light screen, the star light, so I've focused us on the stars. Ready to go. All I have to do now is set it and forget it. Alright, so it is the next morning and the little camera did okay. I did a 7-hour time lapse from about 10 o'clock till about 6 a.m. I did have a battery pack which saved a lot of tears and worries. The old lens muff performed well, but you know, it was a full moon, so it's a bit hard to get some really true dark sky shots, but I think it turned out alright, and it shows you what you can get with this little camera. It's a nice little time-lapse camera, especially if you have a battery pack attached and a very fast lens. But overall, look, it does a decent job and will get you some good results. Would I use it as a main astro time-lapse camera? Probably not, but if you just get a fast lens, I think you should be okay. Now it is the next morning. It's very, very still and still very, very cold, so I might have to go back inside and have something to eat. All right, until next time. Cheers. Well, there you go. Hopefully this has shown you that the Z52 isn't that bad of an option for a night sky shooting camera. But the key takeaway here is use a good, fast lens. As usual, thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you next time. Cheers.